ready.
Welcome to episode 54 of the Go Get 'em Agility podcast. My name is Margaret Hughes and I'm your host.
Today I want to talk about the rear cross, which is one of your 3 side changes that we have in agility. And I want to do this as a podcast, so I'm going to try and take the audio from this video and turn it into a podcast. But if you're feeling like it's confusing, what I'm saying to you over the podcast isn't making sense, then I would encourage you to watch the video part of this. So I'm going to give this a little bit more verbal explanation rather than demonstrating it as much. So I'm going to demonstrate it as well. And so I think that there are some elements of the rear cross that are really important to see. And so that's why I'm doing it as a video. I also think that the rear cross is by far the hardest of the 3 side changes that we have for the dog. I also think it's very difficult for the handler, but also for the dog. So the 3 side changes, front cross, blind cross, and rear cross. The rear cross is the only one that needs dog training added into the equation along with handler training. So the front cross and the blind cross, the dogs pick those side changes up naturally. They go towards our face, they go towards our hand. Our hand signal's trained, but our face is not. And so they will naturally go from our right side to our left side, depending on which side we're facing and which side we're looking at. With the rear cross, because the dog is in front of us when they perform the rear cross, there's a lot of dog training elements that have to stay in play in order for it to be successful. And for me, when I'm looking at a rear cross, my success is on, did my dog go to the desired obstacle and did they turn the direction that I intended them to do? Because you can try for a rear cross and the dog still turns the incorrect direction and then comes and finds you. That, in my opinion, is an attempt at a rear cross, but it's not a successful rear cross. So when we are looking at the rear cross, the dog has a couple of elements that they have to have trained in order for the rear cross to be successful. And the main one is learning to turn away from us. So learning to turn their body away from us, their head away from us, and come up on our other hand. So I'm going to give a demonstration here. So this is for video, and then for the podcast, if you want to see it, you got to go to the video. All right, so the very first thing that I teach my dogs when doing a rear cross is how to turn away. And so I do circle work in the very beginning, getting them to circle away from me as opposed to into me. So when they're turning away, they don't always enjoy doing that. They have to be trained to do that, because especially when we're in motion. So having them turn away on both sides. This is the first thing that I teach them. And I'll teach them both directions at the same time. So teaching them to turn into me, that's the beginning of our front cross. And then turning away from me is the beginning of our rear cross. And when I'm doing that, I also, as they get better, I include my offhand. So I bring my hand across my body. The dog still stays to the side of me, so my dog's in heel position, and they turn away from me. So turning away from me using my offhand. Using my offhand, turning him away, and doing circles as he turns away. So that's the first thing that I do. Then the second thing that I do, once they understand that, and they're doing that really well, and the learning to turn away from you for some dogs can take multiple sessions to get them comfortable with it, because our hand is going over their head when we're doing the rear cross, and some dogs do not like having your hand over their head. And so if that's the case, then just work that concept of going away from you with your hand that's closest to them. right, so once they understand how to circle away, then I add in my movement as well. So I'm going to do what's called a tandem turn, and that essentially means that we're both going to turn the same direction, and he's going to end up on the hand that I want him to be on in the end. So I'm going to start him on my side. We're both facing the same direction, and I'm using my offhand across my body. I'm going to turn him away, and as I do, I step in the new, I step towards him, kind of turning towards him. So I step turning towards him, and now we're both facing the opposite direction. So if I'm facing north, we turn to the west, both of us, and now we're facing south. So that was starting him on my left side, and he ends up on my right side. I'm not moving very much. I'm basically pirouetting in place. All right, so now I'm going to bring him onto my right side. So I've got him on my right. We're facing north. I'm going to turn him east, and then we're both going to end up facing south. So I turn him east, I turn as well, and now we're both facing south. And I can do it I can turn to the east as well, so I can do a 90-degree turn. So turning him and facing east now, that would be a 90-degree rear cross. But the point is that my dog is learning to turn away and side change with me. Now, one of the confusing things about the rear cross is that some folks signal with the dog hand, the hand that is closest to the dog. So they'll give a little hand flick that you're going the direction that we're going. So if my dog's on my right, they're turning right. My dog's on my left, they're turning left. So they will use the dog arm to help indicate you're taking that jump and turning right. I personally bring up my offhand. And so you'll see it both directions, you'll see it both ways, and there's arguments for using the dog hand, there's arguments for using the offhand. And so it comes down to, one, what does your trainer show you? Two, what feels more comfortable for you as a handler? But three, how does your dog read it? So I personally think that the offhand, while it's harder for the handlers to execute sometimes, I do think that the dogs figure out that this hand coming across means we're going away from us, going away, turning my left hand coming up means that the dog is turning right. My right hand coming up means the dog is turning left. So I'm pointing in the direction that we're going by having my hand across my body and signaling we're going away from the current direction. So once my dog understands how to circle away, and they understand that, and then the handling part of that training is that I learn to turn as well. So I learn to turn my dog and then also turn my body at the same time. Once we start to get that skill, then it starts to come into handler training and teaching the handler how to give a hand signal for the turn on the flat. So you can do this on the flat without any equipment. That's where I would encourage you to start it, and then moving on to equipment. And so when you're doing this, if you want to practice this without a dog, you need to visualize where the dog is. And so you can use a bar to help indicate, hold the bar in the side that you want your dog on. So I currently have my bar, my dog, on my left side. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to help my dog go forward because they have to be in front of us. So I'm going to allow them to get forward, drive them forward, and I bring up my outside hand to indicate we're turning. And as I do that, I'm stepping into my dog and changing hands. And so teaching our body mechanics of where the dog is and where we are in relation to the rear cross can help the handler to get the mechanics and the visualization of what the handler is doing. I was driving to a jump. Dog is on my left side. We're going to be turning left. and going around the left wing. So I'm going to send my dog forward, bring my hand up to indicate we're going that way, step across, and pick my dog up on my right hand. Here's where it gets into the dog training part of it. So a couple of things that are really important for the rear cross. The first one is that the dog has commitment to the obstacle. If they're not committed to the obstacle, that's job number one, is teaching them how to stay committed to the wing of either side, right? So if I'm doing a pull turn, they'll stay committed to the right wing. If they're on my left side, if I'm doing a rear cross, they'll stay committed to the jump, and I will show them the side change. But they have to stay committed to the jump because you're putting on a lot of pressure here, and the dogs will start to question whether or not they're supposed to take the jump first. So they'll feel the pressure coming on, and if they're not solid in their commitment to the jump, then they'll pull off. They'll abandon the jump altogether, and then the rear cross falls apart. So when we're doing this, there are two main setups here. One, the dog has to stay committed to the jump. The second thing, and one of the most important things for the side change, for the rear cross side change, is that the handler must step behind the dog. So if this is my dog and he commits to the jump, I'm stepping across his path, I'm bringing up my outside hand to indicate it, and the dog's taking the wing while I step to the side of it. And the further forward my dog is, the sooner I have to step in the direction that I want my dog to go. Now, what I want you to watch for in this video is, where does Eli notice I do the side change? Does he notice it on the bar, after the bar, or how far before the bar? So where does my dog notice the side change? So I'm going to do one that is, I'm going to try and time this pretty late, and he may not turn the correct direction because I am going to do it late. But does he notice, and if he does notice, when does he notice? He didn't notice it all, right? So I was super, super late, and he finished off the direction that he was going, which is correct. I was super late, so I didn't give him that rear cross information timely, and he finished out the jump. So that was very good on his part. I'm going to do it late again. So where did he see it? Where did he see that rear cross? That was super late on my part. He noticed it right about here. He's already taken the jump. All right, so this time I'm going to be timely in it. Where did he notice that? Right about here, right? So he noticed it. He changed his direction of his eye contact. He changed direction of his lead and grabbed the jump almost before I finished pushing it. So a few different ways that you can train the rear cross. One of them is just to use any jump stanchion. Any jump stanchion, you don't need two of them until you start to get discrimination between the rear cross and a backside. And what I like to do is give my dog plenty of room, and that same circle work is having them go around the wing. So starting with him, he's closest to the wing, bringing my outside hand across my body, turning his head, and I can turn with him, or I can just have him come up on the side. I do like to step with them so that they start to understand that my stepping is also quite important. When you're teaching the rear cross, make sure that you are being equal in both sides. So getting them to turn, step, reward, doing both sides equally. The rear cross is one of those behaviors that you need to do a ton of reps on. This is not something that will just come easily in a trial. The dog's understanding of how to turn away from you and how to stay committed to a jump wing is pretty important. And so the more that they have drive to stay committed to the jump wing, the easier it is for them. Okay? Now when we bring two wings into play, so when we have both jump stanchions in play, in the very beginning, do not put a bar on it. The bar complicates the jumping for the dog. And so if, when I gave that demonstration of where did Eli find the side change, at what point in the progression towards the jump did he find it? Did he find it before the jump, on the bar? So did he find it before the bar? Did he find the side change information on the bar? Or did he find the side change information after the bar? If he's not seeing the information soon enough, out before he has the point to take off, then he's going to lift in the direction that he thought we were going. And once the dog lifts in that direction, it is only the experienced dog that can turn mid-air and go the other direction. And you'll see dogs try, even inexperienced dogs will sometimes try. And if they do try and they're not skilled jumpers, they almost always drop the bar. So it is only a very skilled jumper with really good skills on how to maneuver their body over a bar that can, one, turn mid-air, and two, not take the bar down at the exact same time. So they need that information that the turn is coming, the rear cross turn is coming. They need it before they pick their front feet up, which means that they have to, the handler has to have their timing down on when to give it, okay? Most dogs, if they don't see the rear cross in time, will finish out the direction that they were jumping, spin on the landing side, and go find their handler. And there's two main reasons why I don't want that. So it's illegal, it is not illegal for a dog to jump the incorrect direction on a rear cross, spin on the landing, and go find their handler. You will not get any penalty from any organization in agility. But it does two very important yucky things, potential yucky things. The first one is that you're more likely to have the dog back jump. Right? So you're more likely to have them spin the incorrect direction and figure out where the handler went and back jump the bar to go and get them. Okay? So that's yuck number one. Yuck number two is that it puts the dog on a different line than the handler intended. All right? So when the dog turns incorrect and then spins on the landing to go find the handler, they're on a completely different line than the handler anticipated them to be on with a clean rear cross jump. And so that line change that the dog ends up, the new path that the dog ends up on, can really mess with the handler. Right? Now they have to configure very quickly how to get them back onto the intended path that they wanted. And so sometimes that requires the handler to juggle not only the potential back jump, but also the new path for the next obstacle. And that can have a snowball, a domino effect for the next three obstacles, right? Until there's a place where the handler can catch up and rethink where the path continues. And so turning incorrectly, it messes with the dog's head. They're like, wait, why did you change the turn and not tell me? So one, dogs get PO'd, and some dogs stop dead in their tracks. They're like, what? You never gave me the information. I'm done trying. You need to help me. So some dogs quit, right? You give them the incorrect direction, they quit altogether. Some dogs end up on the wrong path. Some dogs end up back jumping. So it's just a yucky altogether if they don't do the rear cross cleanly, right? So handler timing is important, but also handler execution is important. For dogs that are not driven to the jump, that are not committed to the jump, then I would work on that first before I try and put a rear cross into a trial situation. Because the rear cross is demotivating for dogs in that, well, it's not so much demotivating. What it is the handler has to slow down if they're out of place in order to let the dog pass them so that they can do the rear cross. And in my opinion, if the handler is having to slow down dramatically to accomplish a rear cross, then chances are they could have sped up to get a front or a blind, in my opinion. So if that's the case, then get your butt in gear and get the blind or the front in, because a dramatic drop in speed on the handler's part with a dog that is soft, with a dog that is unmotivated, with a dog that is unconfident, can really make agility yucky to them. And so I would work on two things if I had a soft dog. One, I would work on commitment. I would work on building up the value just for going around wings. Not the rear cross, not the front cross, just going around wings, period, is make that a more exciting thing for them, more rewardable jump training, rather than focusing on contacts or tunnels, is focus on building up your jumps and making them more rewardable. And we do that by dropping the bar height and more rewards for working around a wing as opposed to actual jump training. So for unconfident dogs, I do not put rear crosses into my handling if I can help it until they are better trained. And I will keep working my rear crosses in practice, building them up as strong as I can. But when it comes to a trial, if my dog is starting to shut down, the last thing I want to do is show them a rear cross, because for soft dogs, they just say, I don't want to do this anymore. All right, so when we do finally put the bar onto the jump, start it very low. So when we are teaching our dogs how to turn the correct direction on the rear cross, if the bar is set at their regular full height that they would jump at a trial, their drive to have you be behind them and their drive to go towards the jump diminishes greatly if the bar is too high. So first start without a bar, then build a low bar on. And what you want to watch for, and the only way that I like to advance my training is my dog turning the correct direction on landing? And if they're not turning on correct direction on landing, or even ideally, I want the turn to happen before the bar so I can see my dog's eyes shift the correct direction. I see my dog's shoulder base rotate the correct direction. If it's happening before the bar, then I can start to increase the bar height. But if my dog is turning the incorrect direction or not staying committed to the jump wing, then I don't want any bar on there or super, super low, okay? And there's a lot of different ways that we can work rear crosses, so I'm going to show you a couple of them. When I first introduced the bar onto my rear cross training, I like to use bowls to help me. And in the beginning, I only work one direction with one bowl. And as they advance, then I bring in two bowls, and the dog has to have an understanding, or I have to have good timing in my side change pressure in my step behind my dog to show them which bowl I want them to go to. So the reason for the bowls, or target plates, or lotus ball, or manners minder, it doesn't matter what you're using it for, or what target you're using them to go to. What matters matters is the predictability of the reward for the dog. So what the bowls do, what the manners minder does, what the lotus ball does, is it helps the dog understand that there is a reward involved here, and that to drive towards that. So we want them to drive through the bar, but we also want to teach them to drive in a certain direction. So I first start and just show them how to do this with the bar on with a bowl. So I'm going to put a bowl down. I'm going to go ahead and put a reward in it, and I'm going to put it just to the outside. Hold on, buddy. I'm going to put it just to the outside of the correct direction that I want my dog to jump. The bowl is on the left wing. My dog is on my left side, and the dog is going to turn left, right? So dog's on my left, and they're going to turn left, which the bowl is on the landing side of the left wing. So I'm going to go ahead and point to the jump, and I can use either hand at this stage of the game. So if you're going to end up using your left hand to signal a left turn, then use that. Otherwise, bring up your outside hand, point to the jump. My dog has most of the bar, so I'm just to the right side of the bar. He's center, and I'm going to point to the bar either with my onside hand or my offside hand. So I've taught him my offside hand. But right now, all I want is for him to stay committed to the bar, and I'm going to step behind pretty hard. So I'm going to send him, okay, and step. Good boy, super job. And I'm going to bring more cookies to the bowl. Good boy. And he's in the middle of the bar again. Give him permission. Okay. Step and reward. Good boy. So he's feeling the pressure. I'll work one side multiple times in a row to help build up a pattern and a little bit of predictability of where I want them to go. But then, as he gets better, I'm going to do this without a loaded target play. So I'm going to put, the bowl stays there, but there's nothing in it this time. Bring him back to my left side. Give him permission to go. Step, and I now have to load it up. So I have a cookie ready to go in my right hand because he's going to end up on my right hand for the end of the behavior. Okay? Super, good boy. I put cookies down. Good boy. And we do that multiple times until he's driving to it. Then I switch sides. So I bring the bowl over to the other side. The bowl's now on the right landing side of the jump. My dog's on my right side. I'm going to give him most, if not all of the bar. Give him my hand signal. Okay, step and reward. Good boy, super. So again, no cookie in the bowl eventually. Dog is on my right. He's going to go right on the jump, and he's going to end up on my left hand. Now at this point, maybe even actually before this point when it's still no bar on the jump, I would start to add in a verbal if I wanted a verbal. I personally love a verbal, but this is a very motion-based side change, and so you don't necessarily need a verbal. But keep your bar low through the initial stages, because we don't want the jumping effort to be problematic. We want the side change to be main focus, not the jumping. So once I've done one bowl multiple times, multiple sections in a row, then I'm going to bring in two bowls. All right, now I like to have them different colors generally, but I can't find my other color. So we're going with two blue bowls, but they do look quite different, I think. So I'm going to put the bowls down, and now he has a choice between turning right or turning left, and it's all on my pressure. So I'm going to show you that without pressure, he should go in the direction. Without pressure, he should pull towards me. So I'm going to step off his line so he knows that there's not a lot of pressure. He should go to the bowl that is on the light blue bowl on the right landing side of the lane. Jump. Yes, very cool. So it's all about the pressure that I put on. When he goes in front of me showing him either pulling a little bit for him to pull into me, or pushing on his line for him to turn away from me. All right, so he's back on my right side. He's going to go right for the rear cross. I've got a cookie in my left hand. I'm going to give him my hand signal, and more importantly, step behind him when he goes. Okay? Yes, good boy, very good. Can you see him leaning to the right when I'm asking him to turn right? So when I'm putting pressure on, I'm asking him to turn right. He's already starting to take on the right lead in order to get the right rear cross. So I'm going to put him back on my left. I'm going to have him do just a normal pull turn. The only reason that I'm going back and forth between the pull turn and the rear cross turn is because he's well trained. And so I just want to show you how he is listening to my pressure. When I'm working this with a new dog, I don't go back and forth between those two turns because I don't want to confuse the dog. I want to gain a pattern with the dog, and so I'll do rear cross, rear cross, rear cross, rear cross. But as they advance, then I'll show them the difference. This is a pull turn. This is a rear cross turn. This is a pull turn. This is a rear cross turn. And then as they continue to advance, I will add even more. This is a throttle wrap. This is a backside. This is a rear cross. This is a pull turn. So teaching them that there's different turns on one jump, okay? As he's on my left, he's jumping right, and so he's doing a pull turn. So I'm going to release the pressure, okay, and good boy, very. On my left, he's going to do a rear cross, so he's on my left, turning left. Step. Yes, good boy, very good. Throwing the cookie at him because I was late. Good boy. So he started to turn to the right. He started to do a pull turn, and at the last second, over the bar, so he's actually on the landing, he figured out to turn left. Okay? Until they're doing this successfully over multiple sessions, and again, the rear cross is the one side change that you absolutely have to do homework on. The front cross and the blind cross, the dogs can get those almost from 8 weeks. But the rear cross must be taught. They must have the skills of how to turn away, and the handler must have the understanding that the pressure and the step behind the dog is their job, and the dog's job is to stay committed to the jump and to turn in the correct direction. So they have to understand how to turn in the correct direction, and then they have to read the handler's body motion going up to that. So what complicates the rear cross? What mainly complicates it is sometimes the handler puts on the pressure too soon, and the dog pushes off the handler's line. So let me show you what it looks like to give pressure too soon before the dog is committed to the jump. So I'm going to push him, and what should start to happen is he starts to look at either another obstacle on the path that I'm pushing towards, or he'll start to look at the backside. And looks at the backside, right? So I have to stay off my dog's path until they commit to the jump. But once they look at the jump, then I need to put the maximum pressure on. So when they're coming around the bend and coming into the jump, I have to indicate the jump. Then, yes, good boy. Then I can indicate the turn. So if I put too much pressure on too soon, they push for the backside or for another obstacle. So too much pressure, and he pushes for the backside. Good boy. Good job. So I was on my dog's path for that one. Now I'm going to show him his path and then put the pressure on. So showing him his path, then putting the pressure on. Good boy. So notice I'm not giving him any verbals. This is purely on motion. And so if he can't get the jump first, And then, yes, good boy right there. And then the jump or the side change, he'll push off it. So I have to stay clear of my handler's path, and so I have to drive to the side of the jump, or to the side of the bar, essentially. And once my dog picks up on the jump, then I can put the pressure on. So he won't fight me for the bar. If I take the bar away from him with my motion, he will not fight me to get back on it. And so I have to be patient in showing him the bar and then immediately transitioning into putting pressure for the rear cross. So I'm gonna actually have him do a pole turn this time so you can see how my positioning changes. So I step off the bar, yes, good boy. I step off of his path and he turns in the correct direction. Now I'm gonna put a little bit of pressure on and step, yeah, very good. But again, he's doing his job, which is to be committed, right? So he's staying committed to the jump. If I present him with a discrimination between the back side and the front side of the jump, then I need to ask him to come into me first. And when I do that, I do a throttle wrap hand signal. And so when I need my dog to come in pretty strong on me first, then I give them a hand signal almost behind my hip. That means come into me first. And as he grabs onto me and converging on me, then and only then do I flip him back onto the obstacle. And he has learned that if this hand signal is in play, go ahead and come in and take. Come in and take, whether it be a jump or repulse or the tunnel. So my throttle hand is first, and then my rear cross is second. Pull him in first, and then flip it. Moving forward. I have to pull off the line, then put pressure back on the line. Pull him in first, then pressure on. Yeah, very good. Pulling him in first, pressure on. Yes, moving forward. If I put that pressure on too soon, he should jump, he should go to the other side. Good boy, very good. I have to release the pressure in order to get him to converge. Once I see he's converged, then I can put the pressure back on. In first, then pressure on. Good boy. That's getting way more advanced than beginners should be doing, but working up to that, it becomes the beginning of your throttle wrap. And your tandem turn to the backside and all of that. So key elements to the rear cross. Number one, teach the dogs their mechanics of what they need to do. Teach them how to turn away from you. Teach them how to commit to an obstacle, a wing, a tunnel, repulse, whatever you're teaching them to commit to. And then the handler has to learn their mechanics of when to put the pressure on, when to stay off the dog's path, and then when the dog commits, when to put the pressure back on. So it takes time. First, get the dog skill for sure. If you don't have the dog skill, then it doesn't matter how good the handler is, the dog doesn't know their skill to turn away. So that's job number one, is teach the dog how to turn away from you. Then work your hand signal or your mechanics for how to turn into the dog, how to put pressure into the dog without the dog. So just do it on the flat without any dog attached. Use a toy, use a bar, use anything that helps you see where the dog is and that they are turning away from you and you're turning at the same time. So if you're going to use your dog hand, then you need to learn how to bring up your other hand to pick them up. I like to use the off hand right out of the gate. That's the hand we're going to end up on. And so for me, it makes the most sense. But again, there's argument for both ways. So that now comes down to a personal choice. And then do it hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times. You can do it without equipment. You can do it on the flat. Then eventually bring your equipment back in. Start without a bar, then eventually bring the bar back on. I think that we have talked this to death. There's more about angles on how the handler comes into the jump, dictates how the dog takes the jump. So if my rear cross angle is super strong, so if I go from putting pressure on the dog and an immediate hard angled 90-degree turn, my dog's going to take the jump in a stronger turn than if my angle is softer. So if I'm approaching the jump, and then as my dog passes me, my angle goes to 45 degrees on the bar. So dog's approaching on a 90-degree angle. If I create a 45-degree angle the second that my dog passes me, then my dog will generally pick up a 45-degree angle on the landing. Okay? And possibly a little bit on the approach, but definitely on the landing. So the thinner angled my approach is to the center of the bar, then that is the angle that my dog will pick up on the landing of the bar. So if I approach the bar and do a hard 90-degree angle, so now I'm parallel with the bar, then the dog will take the same parallel path off of the bar. So the dog will jump going literally next to the wing, or as close to the wing as possible, and come off the jump on a 90 degree. If I approach on a 45, then my dog is more likely to take a 45-degree angle. It depends on where I'm at, but if I'm pressing for a 45-degree angle on the center of the bar, then my dog's going to pick that up too. And so whatever path we put on the rear cross as the dog approaches the jump is the path that the dog will take on landing. So if I approach in a rear cross, and as my dog gives commitment to the rear cross, and I do a U-turn back on, the dog should wrap the wing and come right back on the wing. So as I approach, I'm approaching on 90, and I turn all the way around, my dog will then also wrap the wing to come back on their path. So they'll mimic your path, essentially. They will follow up with the landing side in the new path that you are running, but you can show that path on the takeoff side, and they'll pick up that path on the landing side.